Normally, when we open the show, with some type of prequel. It highlights my thoughts about the upcoming interview. And this interview was exactly the same. We did a prequel, but after the interview, we both quickly realized that this opening, it can't be the same as the others. I was not prepared for what it was I was going to experience during this interview, mentally or emotionally. What happened to me as a child was a very traumatic experience. But after this interview, I now imagine what these people go through multiple times a day, every day, for years on end. I cringe. That's literally hell on earth. What do we do for them? How can we help them? You support organizations like this who make it their mission to end these travesties that happen to our young people. This particular interview struck a chord with me so deeply that it surprised me a little bit. I thought that talking about my story would be easy from now going forward. But I'm glad that it happened, and I'm glad that it happened organically, and I'm glad that I still feel such raw emotion when it comes to things like this. But in hearing these travesties happening to other people still, and on a much deeper and grander scale than what I experienced, it floored me. And it's an honor, and it's a pleasure for me to expose this organization, which sheds light on dark aspects of our society. How's my hair?
His hair. We're rolling.
Hi, I'm Erica Gilchrist, the Unstoppable Woman, speaker, author, and trainer. And welcome to WTF, Women Thriving Fearlessly, where we reveal the personal stories of successful people to inspire women to thrive. And with us today in this interview, we have a wonderful human being. We have Mary Bonnet of Her Story Theater. Mary, thank you so much for joining us here on the show. We appreciate you taking time out to speak with us about what you have going on here. Thank you for joining the show. So tell us a little bit about Her Story Theater.
Her Story Theater was founded in 2010, and its mission is to shine bright lights in dark places on women and children in need of social justice and community support. So we take a three-prong approach, and the first one is awareness, second one is getting people proactive, and the third is to raise funds for a particular partner that deals with the central issue that the play deals with.
Okay, so how exactly does it work? So you find or select a social justice issue.
Yes.
You select someone's particular story. Is that how that works? And then you bring it live to the stage?
So we select an issue. So we had a trilogy. The first one was on homeless women. Mm-hmm. The second one was on sex trafficking, all dealing with Chicago area issues. And the third is violence against women, which we have not mounted yet. Mm-hmm. So then in saying that, we partner with someone. And the first one was Glossover. It was on homeless ladies from Deborah's Place. So I interviewed about 30 women from Deborah's Place, mm-hmm. and then took their stories and looked at who they represented out on those streets, what the statistics were, and what the issues were out on the street, and tried to select stories that would be representative of those issues. And then we put it in a beauty salon mm-hmm. and spa. And the audience went from room to room where these actors were getting manicures, pedicures, real time with real technicians. It's great. So that the domestic violence was getting massage, the migrant worker was getting a pedicure, the runaway was getting her nails done, the ex-con was getting her hair done, and in real time by real technicians. And then the audience would sit and listen to the stories they would tell the technician that was working on them.
How do you find the actors for this?
Hold auditions.
Okay.
And we're now part of the Chicago League of Theaters, so that's opened up many doors. And we just hold auditions. And a lot of people will come to us with an invested interest in the issue itself.
Okay.
You know, and so we've had marvelous actors walk through here.
Very nice. Now, once you hear their amazing stories, who actually writes the script?
I do. Well, the first piece we did with Glossover, it was a collective effort. So we met for 8 to 10 weeks, a group of 9 women sat in a room, and I gave them each their person, and they would go home and work a monologue. And then we'd come back collectively together, develop the monologue even further, then I would edit it down to 7 minutes exactly and make sure it hit all the right notes, and then directed it and put it up.
So how long does it take from the time that you actually hear the story to the time that you actually finish with the script?
I see. It varies based on the script. So Glossover were monologues, and it was collective effort with these various women, and we kind of chunked that out in about 8 to 10 weeks. It was amazing. It went very quickly, and it was a lovely show. The second one, Shadowtown, took much, much longer. That was probably a year and a half. So tons of research. Also a lot of mental preparation to walk into that world on my part. Sure. I had to get ready for that. And I did a lot of research before I entered, and then got a partner that was marvelous, opened many doors, and then it was dozens of interviews. So that took a very long time. And then the writing of it I did very differently than I did the show coming up called Shadowtown 2, The Johns. I wrote it, I put it together, probably about 3 different scripts, and they didn't work. And I had already cast, so I knew who was in front of me. And so then I workshopped it with my cast. And I did Act 1, and we worked Act 1, and then I wrote Act 2.
Okay.
So as we were rehearsing Act 1. So
multitasking. Seriously.
Yeah. And that was trying to get it right, you know, because it was such it was a story about 10 easy lessons to become master of the game told through the pimp's eyes.
Wow.
Yeah. Okay. And it was how you traffic these girls and how you go about it. And I had a girl from Humboldt Park. I had a girl from the west side of Chicago, Ling Ling from China, and a little girl from Naperville. So you have all that broad section of people. And then their family members, how they were impacted by family members. So lesson 1 was how to grow a hoe. And it takes, 11 to 13 years. You got to be patient, according to the pimp. And so that's what you saw their background, you saw their development and how they met at this crossroad with this trafficker, how they got to the point where they would be in the arms of the trafficker. Wow. And be in his sight range. And then once they were, you went down his Faustian journey into hell, basically, traveling down through the dregs of what happens to these young girls and how they get out or how they don't get out. It was storybook manner in style, very Brechtian in style. Pulls you in, pushes you out, intellectually, emotionally, and a lot of music, a lot of dance. My actors were fabulous in that. And then at the end of that journey, that audience had been there and done that. And they were very moved by it. And there was very little foul language. There was no nudity, all the things that you would expect. But indeed, in the manner that was presented artistically, it had tremendous impact. You didn't need it because the subject matter was so intense.
Heavy, absolutely. Yeah. And you mentioned...
But funny, too. The pimp was very funny, actually.
A funny pimp. Okay. Why not?
Humor.
He's a person, too. So you mentioned how mentally challenging it was for you and, listening to that story and developing and crafting this. How do you handle those mental and emotional challenges when you're listening to all these tragic stories?
And there are many, they are tragic stories. Sex trafficking is probably the dregs of how women are treated. It's the trash can of how women are treated in society. This is the bottom of it. I guess, but for the grace of God, it's not my story, it's their story, so the least I could do is represent it properly.
Okay.
And, certainly be empathic about it, but do them justice.
So
and that was my journey.
You take some comfort in knowing that you're shining a light on a very dark place to bring awareness to it, and that's one of the ways you're able to handle that.
At the end of it, I perceive us collectively saving lives and changing concepts and perceptions of who these girls are, what they are receiving in life at the hands of just brutality, just money, brutality, power. And then with the Johns, Shadowtown 2, the Johns, that was the journey into the life of men who buy these little girls. And these are little girls. I mean, I said, the average age is 11 years old. Anne's house has girls between the ages of 12 and 17. And I met them. And the majority of them were 13, 14, 15-year-olds, which are easily manipulated. And that's who those traffickers seek. And this has become worldwide issue, $32 billion business, second largest in the world, beat out weapons, illegal business in the world. And these are on the backs of these, and boys, young girls and boys that are being trafficked. So it's a hideous crime that people don't know about. It is in the shadows. And so I came in with skills of I can write, I can direct, I can, organize. So this became a passion of mine to get this out in front of people who literally could then take it and do something about it.
Absolutely. And thank you for that, for shining that light in that very dark space. Her Story Theater, this was the brainchild of whom?
That was mine. So when I got out of, I taught for many years theater with young people, and I used this type of approach with them, and it was remarkable how life-changing it was for them. We did a piece called When the Bow Breaks, and it was on emotional, psychological, and physical abuse, child abuse. And it was based on many of their stories, although it was all anonymous. But I knew specific children who things were going on at home, and I invited them in to be part of this process. And then I brought a therapist at the end of that. And it was a small situation where I think 200 children saw the piece. And they would have been ages 3rd grade through 8th grade. But out of that, 30 children stepped forward and said, this is going on in my home. And out of that, 2 stepped forward and said, my father is sexually molesting me. And out of that, a father was removed. And these are children that went to the therapist themselves, spoke up, proactive, wanted to create change. And when I saw how impactful it was for them, and we did it on divorce, many pieces, and then I said, well, as I went back to the adult world, I said, wonder what it can do, with many people who can actually have the power to create change.
And on average, how old were these children who came forward and said that this was happening to me?
It went through 8th grade, so that would have been around 8 years old through 12, 13 years old. Yeah.
My goodness. And just make sure you keep rolling because it's about to get heavy for me. And my story is very similar to that. But it took me a very long time past that age to be able to talk about that. And to hear that there are children who are younger who came forward to say, this is happening to me. These people are violating me who are supposed to be here to protect me, and I don't know what to do, and they had someone to talk to. So being in a position where you can take that travesty and expose it to people to say, hey, this is real, this is happening, but you can help. And for the people to respond and say, yes, I want to help. Just personally, I want to say thank you.
You're very welcome.
For that. And I encourage you to keep doing that.
Sure.
So it wouldn't take someone getting to their teenage and young adult years to finally say, this is something that has happened to me over a period of time. It has affected my relationships with other people. It has affected how I view myself. It has affected how I view the world. It has affected my self-esteem. It has affected my work. It has affected my health. It has affected my mind, my emotional and my spiritual well-being, that so much so that you don't even recognize who you are or who you're supposed to be or who you can trust. And from the bottom of my heart, I sincerely thank you for that. And I'm encouraging you to keep going. And I didn't know before this interview how deep it had gotten for Her Story Theater. And in this moment, I'm saying to you in front of everybody that you have my full support
Thank you.
going forward, because I didn't know.
Thank you.
And but that's the reason why we do this type of programming. You know, we highlight celebrities, and we have news anchors on the show, and artists and producers who are very successful, and I'm not taking anything away from them, but the premise of what we do is to inspire people to thrive, and you can't do that when you are broken on the inside. And so we're teaching people how to heal and how to thrive. And it's things like this that we want to share globally, because this is a global show. And if you have any means whatsoever to accept donations virtually, the internet, it's going to come. I promise you that, because this is something that needs that type of exposure, because it's not just here.
No,
it's
global.
Everywhere. It's absolutely everywhere. And it's easier for someone who's never been through that type of travesty to say, oh, what a shame. And they really don't know what happens in the hearts and minds of victims and survivors. So thank you for that. And you are going to get a lot of support.
Thank you.
As a result of this. So what is next for Her Story Theater? Where do you see this ultimately?
Thank you. I would like to backtrack a little,
Sure.
just to highlight with the sex trafficked victims. The majority of them were the ones that I interviewed. Mm-hmm. Absolute majority were sexually molested at a young age. The youngest was 4, and she was continually molested all the way till she had a child by her father at age 14, and then kicked out of the house because they didn't believe. They thought she was the problem. She had created. She had seduced the father.
My goodness.
As he set up. So anyway, she ended out on the streets, and of course traffickers went, yes, come on in, you know. So those are people that are very vulnerable to traffickers. Those that have gone through that feel all those feelings you were sharing, and that was typical with that group of girls, and boys too, who had been sexually molested.
And that's not something that gets exposed as much as young girls, but it does happen to young boys.
All the time.
As
Huge
well.
problem.
Absolutely.
Huge
Do you
problem.
find that it's more difficult for the young boys to come forward, or
Yes.
it is?
Yes.
Why do you think that is?
Well, it's taboo. You just don't do that. It takes away their masculinity. It's, they deal with it differently. Boys are not taught to open up and share. But even girls, when it happens to them, they get shut down too. You know, you're lying. You were the seducer. You were this, you were that. So it's a very difficult position to be in. Or they're threatened in some way by the perpetrator. And so they're told, well, I'll tell, or, you know, I'll make sure that somebody hurts if you tell.
Yeah.
There's all sorts of manipulations with children. And but it is really, I think that was probably the biggest discovery out of all this full journey, even with the homeless ladies, was the amount of molestation that goes on in families and neighbors and boyfriends and uncles. And, you know, it's just, I had a 76-year-old woman that was sitting next to me, just a dear friend, burst into tears.
Yeah.
We were talking about these girls who've been trafficked. She's a playwright. It happened to her that many years ago, and she kept it inside and shared it finally with people. So like yourself, I mean, it's just a horrible, horrible issue that needs to be addressed, and it's a tough one.
And you
'Cause
never
it is
know.
so in the closet.
Yes, and that's what you never know who has experienced what. You don't know what their journey is. You don't know what their story is. And people can be very insensitive sometimes, even after they find out what your story is. If it's not their story, sometimes they can be very insensitive. Well, what did you do specifically to bring that on?
To provoke it.
So, yeah, what?
Girls really get that a lot.
Yes, absolutely.
Boys less, but girls get it. But the boys are tight-lipped, and they suffer horribly. And they act out in all sorts of ways at the end of it all. Girls do too at a certain point. When they hit puberty, 13, 14, they start sexually acting out. A lot of those boys on the streets now, the runaways, they're out there for that, to avoid what was happening at home.
How do you select which particular social justice issue that you're going to do next?
My passion's around. These are people that are on the fringe without a voice, and it's so hidden. When you walk by homeless ladies, you just, you know, and people do that all the time. And I know that the homeless men have it's terrible, but there's a hierarchy, you know, and the women are on the bottom of that, so they needed a voice. And then the sex trafficking was so hidden, and nobody knew that was going on. And it's hit the high schools, it hit the junior highs, and they go young. And these little kids perceive it as, from some communities, perceive it as a step up, or my boyfriend, I'm helping my boyfriend. There's so much mental manipulation with these young girls. So just to raise awareness, we're taking it to the high schools next year.
Excellent.
Yeah, they need
Very
to
good.
see it. And then I have a middle school program, too, for young girls that we'll take it to. And we'll go as young as 6th grade.
Did you receive any resistance from the people in charge to bring something like this to high schools and middle schools?
No, the Chicago Teachers Union, God bless Karen Lewis, they bought out a house. They're very supportive. They want to see this come into the schools, and we went to the Board of Education. They were also very open and receptive for this. It's controversial, but it's tastefully done, and it's happening. We had kids from Gage Park or high school. It was happening in their backyard. They knew kids. They could name names, and when they saw it, they went back to their schools, and they actually became activists to try to create change in their schools. It's very heartwarming. It was great.
Oh.
It was like, yes. And they're very vocal about it, and they did projects, they did videos in their school, and they had more of a heartfelt or empathy toward those little girls on the streets, where before they just thought they wanted to be there, and that was a choice somehow.
So for anyone who's watching right now, how could they support you?
Volunteers, you could certainly volunteer for us. We do have a donation line, of course, on www.herstorytheater.org. And there is a .com, but there are witches in Connecticut.
Ah, okay.
.org.
So we're doing the .org, okay? ORG.
But they're fine too. And I just start reading material if they're interested in any of those areas. I will eventually have these scripts out to the public so that any community could take them, mount it, give to a partnership. That's
wow.
the idea, to have a ripple effect.
Yes.
So eventually they'll be published for anyone to take this. And our ask is that you raise funds for some group in your community and raise awareness.
So
and get people proactive on these various subjects.
And that's excellent. Because it's not just Chicago.
No.
Starting
worldwide.
here in Chicago, but this is a global show.
Oh,
So
these are global issues.
Exactly. So publishing the scripts and having them available for people all over the place
Yes.
Will create that ripple effect. Because I know some people who are watching now are going, well, I don't live in Chicago, so how do I? And that's exactly how you can help.
Absolutely.
You can take it to their local community theater and make sure that the proceeds are donated. They can also go to herstorytheater.org and donate, if they're not in a position to do anything else other than that. So primarily, I think a lot of people watching want to know, what can I do if I'm not right there?
They can go
in
to their
Chicago?
community and see, different organizations that might be supporting this type of action for sex trafficked girls or homeless people, or violence against women, certainly, and volunteer, or, just read the articles, see what people are doing and step forward on that, speak to the issue.
How much
become
support
involved.
did you have in starting this?
I brought all my friends in.
Friends are great.
I have
Friends
one
are
that just walked
good.
in the door. So my friends came in, and they continue to. I do kind of. It's very grassroots because we try to keep expense down so our monies can go to the organizations and
Sure.
the cause. So our first show, people didn't get paid at all. They all volunteered. God bless them. Even the place we performed, the Maria Sigmund, her wonderful salon, she donated. Salon Echo, I'll put a plug in for, on Bryn Mawr. And even the Din Theater we went, they were very helpful with that. And just people have been fabulous of volunteering their time. More and more we're paying actors and help, but not that much. We're non-equity, and but something to honor their skills and all their time
Absolutely.
and energy they're giving to this.
So I want to make sure I say this on camera so that I can be held accountable for this. This is our inaugural season. And you were talking about, when you first started out, your friends were just there, right?
Yeah,
And it's the same thing with this particular season. My friends are there and they're supporting me because they believe in the vision and the mission. And we are seeking sponsorships. And I want to say this on camera. when we get, not if, but when we get sponsorships and financial support, I am committing to financially supporting Her
thank you
Story
very much.
Theater. I promise you that. One of the ways to support Her Story Theater is also to support the show, because
Yes.
we're going to turn around and support you. I think that what you are doing is, there's no word in the English language or any other that can describe the impact that you are having on millions of people. Anyone who's under the sound of my voice right now either is or knows someone
Yes, they do.
who is a victim and or survivor of any one of those social justice issues that you named,
right.
male and female. So it doesn't just touch me. It doesn't just touch you. It touches everybody. And all of us should be held accountable and responsible for what happens to each other.
Is that brother's keeper?
Yes, we are. I mean, if we don't take care of each other,
And
what?
sister's keeper.
Absolutely. What are we going to do if we don't take care of each other? What else? But I want to make sure I said that on camera, because I'm committed to that. I am absolutely blown away by what you're doing and combining things that I love.
Theater.
Right? I'm just gonna say it's like I walked in here, right? I saw the stage, I just laid out. I was like, I'm home. And then the lights came on, and I was like, yes, project. So
We have fabulous microphones too.
my goodness. So combining things that I love to do, the theater, social justice issues, and I'm in heaven right now. And up until this point, this is probably the most impactful interview that I've done. And I cannot wait. I cannot wait to see the results of the impact that this interview is going to have. I do have a question.
Yes.
What woman can you think of, past or present, is a really great example of a woman who's thriving fearlessly?
Hillary Clinton.
Expand on that.
Well, this is a woman who came from wearing, the pantsuits, and she's a woman of my era. And there weren't jobs for women like that around. I mean, you could be a secretary, you could be a nurse, you could be a teacher. But she was a woman that just pushed through. She was phenomenally intelligent, very strong, and continued on with her vision and trying to set the world right through her eyes, and married a man who I think had that same type of vision, for the good of the people. And she became, when I saw her become first lady, she was put in that secondary position. It was real hard to watch. And they started doing cookies around her aprons and, what she should and should not do, or how her hair looks. And so trivialized. It was very painful to watch. And knowing how brilliant she was, but she thrived through that and tried to get the health care through and got pounded on by that, know your place. And then what was remarkable to me, she just lemons into lemonade. So then she's in the Senate now. He's out of there, and she holds on, and she keeps the marriage intact. Better or worse, she did it, and that was her call. And then she becomes senator, and she creates tremendous change and gains tremendous respect on both sides. So these horrible foes that she had are saying wonderful things about her. And then she moves on to become Secretary of State and does a brilliant job and becomes, worldwide respected by all these diplomats and leaders of the world. And now her consideration at her age to become first female president. We're one of the few countries in Europe, in comparison, who have not had a female leader to be as liberated as we are. We haven't had it, and they've been shot down. And I'm just praying that if she does run, they will not talk about her pantsuits, and they will not talk about her hair, and they will talk about the brilliance of her policies and her mind. So she's a remarkable woman of our time, and who's been much maligned continually and demonized, and yet keep rising out of the ashes.
Which is an
just
example.
a remarkable person. Yeah, for every woman to follow, regardless of either religion or creed or anything, race
Or political views.
Yes.
Her accomplishments stand on their own.
She is as strong as they come.
As my grandmother say, the truth has legs and can stand on its own.
That's right. And she's a grandmother now too, so that's nice.
Yes, absolutely. So if you had something you wanted to say to the viewers who are watching right now, what would that be?
It's important to just a little more kindness in the world. And if you see things going on that you know aren't right, to speak up and not be silent. Because I think Albert Einstein said, yes, we know there's a lot of evil in this world, but what's even more evil is not to speak up.
Right.
And to leave it in silence and to know that it's going on. So, call to action. We can all make a difference if we collectively come together. And there's so much happening to our children that's not healthy.
Yeah.
And they see so much and they absorb so much, and that just to protect them a little more.
Yes.
From that evil.
And where exactly are you located?
We're a floating theater. We're in Chicago, on the north side is the office, but our theater, we place it in found areas that we think will have the most impact.
Okay. And if someone has a space for you to use to further
fabulous.
this, they would primarily go to herstorytheater.org.
Yes.
Is that the best possible way?
Yes, it is.
Okay, excellent.
Super.
Mary, my goodness. My goodness, this has been a heartfelt interview. This has been, I feel a shift that just happened. I don't know how to put words to it, but there's been a shift. And I thank you from the bottom of my heart and soul for what it is that you do. And I encourage you to move forward with it. Thank you for the interview. And thank you for being on the show. We appreciate that. So where do we go from here after an interview like that? And one of the things I noticed that was happening while Mary was speaking is that my mind, it kept racing, and I kept thinking like, okay, what else can we do? What else can we do? What else can we do in order to help? And then I started thinking about all of the women and the young girls who have approached me, sharing with me their stories that are so similar in nature. And I am only one person, and I can only affect so many people. And I'm always wondering, how can I help them? How can I send them resources? And then this interview happened. And what I've come to realize on this day is that I am not the only one who can help these young girls and these women in a capacity that is unconventional. I thank God for the resources, the shelters, the social justice organizations. But something like this is so incredibly unique. And it touches and reaches people on an unbiased level. It's different from the papers. It's different from the news. This is something that you can sit and watch and experience and feel as if you are there with these young people who are going through all of these issues. It's not like the movies where they can cut and edit and put stuff in and out. It happens live with real people sharing the stories of other real people. So I'm going to end this debrief the same way that I started. Where do we go from here? From here, you go to herstorytheater.org. You help, you support in any way that is comfortable for you. You come and talk to me for more resources that can assist you. Now, I do realize that I got really emotional and really dramatic in this interview, and I make no apologies for that. I've shared publicly my story hundreds of times, but for some reason in this particular interview, it hit me harder than it's ever hit me in my professional career. And that lets me know that we are on the right track. It also lets me know how super hypersensitive I still am about this. And it lets me know that my passion has not dwindled. The fire is still lit. And I'm going to spend every waking hour, every single breath that I have in this body, in this place, to bring an end to all of the travesty, the sexual trafficking, the domestic violence, intimate partner violence for young boys and girls. This is my way of giving back on a global level, and I'm asking you to join me. So if you want to thrive fearlessly, the first place to start is charity, to help others be in a position where they can thrive fearlessly as well. And until we speak again, be unstoppable.